Okay, so this Saturday, Hassan Rouhani was elected the president of Iran. Um, he has, I believe it was Saturday. Anyway, he is not in office right now. He will be inaugurated this year in August, around the same time that I'll be returning to school. His election is interesting for a few reasons. Number one, nobody really saw it coming. He was an underdog in the elections for most of the polling, from what I can tell. It seems to me as if he was garnering a massive wave of attention amongst Iranians who were wanting someone with his message to come along, but nobody was, if you will, paying attention to the attention that he was garnering until all of his silent supporters actually like went out and voted. So that's a thing. Number two reason why it's interesting is he wants to downplay nuclear rhetoric in Iranian foreign policy in general. He wants to, what else does he want to do? He wants to kind of downplay the morality police mentality that is pervasive in the Iranian government since the beginning, well, for a long time, but especially since the beginning of the long and thoroughly psychedelic reign of Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. Um, he describes himself as a moderate, but in all honesty, if you look at his policies, or at least what his platform is, he's a reformer. And he doesn't want to call himself a reformer because he doesn't want the hardliners to make his life harder than it already is. So, the big question surrounding this guy's election is he actually going to do things? A lot of Iranians are kind of cynical about him. Um, they don't think he's genuine-ish. Um, there are many reasons for this. Number one being that, of course, of the many people, of the bunches of people really who um, put their names in to be presidential candidates, only 8 were deemed suitable by the I can't remember what it is. Basically, the God Committee that runs Iran. Um, so he's already the product of a system that doesn't want reform. Two, that system seems to kind of control Iran anyway, and the president doesn't have as much power as the Ayatollah, who is most certainly not in favor of this guy's election. So even if he wins, there seems to be a perception among Iranians that he is a figurehead, bread and circuses. So as I was reading about all of this, I kept looking for comparable points between this guy and Obama because, yeah, um, I noticed a few. Number one being one of one of Rouhani's big promises is that he's going to free Iranian political prisoners who have been locked up since I believe 2009. This rings eerily similar to Obama's promise that he was going to dismantle Guantanamo Bay and then never mentioning it again after his election in any substantive way, let alone doing anything about it. Let's look at their campaign promises too. Obama promised change. I swear to God, if I see another "Yes, we can" sticker, I don't even care if you support Obama. Those stickers are obnoxious. Um, so we have that kind of mentality. That can mean whatever you want it to mean. We We can paint whatever kind of promises we want onto change, and we can paint whatever kind of promises we want onto yes, we can. Yes, we can what? Yes, we can. Whatever you want me to do. Rouhani's slogan is hope and prudence. Especially the word prudence to me. Maybe there's something going on in translation, but prudence seems to be a word often deployed by the kind of Iranian politicians who wave scimitars over their heads. That's happened. Um, it it doesn't necessarily signify to me a reformist mentality. It might, but I'm not sure. What it does signify is a calm, cool-headed mentality that he has seemed to demonstrate in the past. Um, so other reasons why he might not be actually all that he's talked up to be is that he was um, elected. No, not elected. He graduated with a um, Quranic degree. He essentially has a divinity. He essentially went to a divinity school, which at the time of his tutelage would have been exceptionally conservative. Um, and he has served in the Iranian political system for a long, long time, and held a lot of very military positions. So it's it's about half and half, because if you look at it, he's done a lot of things in certain military positions. Like he was the chief negotiator for nuclear relations, I think, or something like that in 2003. And he was extremely cool-headed about that. And in fact, I think was kicked off of it, that commission, for being too accommodating with the West, which is a good sign. Um, and he seems to demonstrate actual prudence. One guy who worked with him has been quoted as saying that he would take a week to write a single sentence, which I'm sure is a exact tall tale, but it demonstrates to me someone who at least thinks through their decisions. So, what I see in Rouhani is an extremely religious man. So, he's not going to be um, lackadaisical. But, interestingly, women at his rallies were tossing off their hijabs, their coverings, which under Ahmadinejad would have seen them being brutally, brutally punished. Um, yeah. And yet, he was okay with it, and in fact seemed pretty happy about it. And furthermore, his name means cleric in Farsi. So we seem to have a very spiritual man, but also a spiritual man in a real sense of the word spiritual, not prejudiced, at least by Iranian standards. And he seems to be, I don't know, I'm conflicted about this. He seems to be a source of possibility. Um, and I think that as his inauguration draws closer, the Iranian public, should keep one thing in mind, and the American Western public in general should keep one thing in mind. The Iranian public should keep in mind that it is entirely possible that Rouhani, though promising, could completely fail and get nothing done. And this concerns me because as the democratic process is a fairly tenuous construct in the Middle East, a failure of this magnitude, a disappointment rather, of this magnitude at this early stage could result in an upheaval of political nihilism. That happened in upon Obama's flop too. Um, Honestly, Obama's election was the last time I can remember pretty much anyone talking about politics seriously. Well, pretty much. Let me rephrase that. People who don't normally talk about politics seriously, talking about it seriously. Um, and now we've let that slide. And I'm afraid that that'll happen to Iranians. So don't get your hopes up. But should do what you get your hopes up actually, but don't don't count on it. And we as the West should keep in mind this because it's our responsibility as well. Hosseini has a major advantage in terms of being a good force for the world because he is a person historically who Westerners, the EU3, Americans, a few Americans, have felt good talking to um, as someone to do business with. So we as the West need to keep that up because if we fail to meet Iranian, not demands, needs, if we fail to behave or comport ourselves in a responsible, ethical way towards the Iranians, then the guy's major advantage, which is that he could maybe stop Iranian nuclear radicalism from proliferating, goes out the door. And considering how belligerent some major officials can be, that's something I'm seriously worried about. But ultimately, I think I'm an optimist about Rouhani. True, he is a part of the system that does things like, beat up people, women especially, for expressing their individuality, etc., etc. Even though he is a product of that system, I think that change can happen within. I think that a system can change from within its own terms. I think that something could possibly happen to Iran that would be good, and I'm looking forward to watching how this guy develops. So discuss below. Have a good day.